How much is enough? Do we measure it by how much we can take or how much we can give? This is the conclusion of the triangle. Welcome to Blanket of Shadows. The goddess of plenty was called Alice in the old country. Her family owned a simple farm. She was a decent farmer, but popular in the village and constantly won the harvest festivals with her goods. Then, one day, a horse kicked her in the face when she was trying to remove a nail from its hoof. She was just trying to help her friend. She lost one eye and gained a gnarly scar. In her mind, she was still the same person, but the shallow people of the village disagreed. She could hear the rumors, the nicknames, the snickers. Even as she became one of the best farmers in the land, with banner crops and fat cows and chickens that laid twice a day, if the legends are to be believed, all people could see was her disfigurement. It was heartbreaking to work so hard to make the world a better place just to find herself the butt of jokes. When her father passed away, the Lord took title of her farm. It wasn't the easiest time to be a woman. She was offered the ability to work the farm for a small salary, but that was an insulting pittance compared to ownership, especially when she knew the farm would fall apart without her. So when a rival lord, who would become King Calyx, approached her with an opportunity to leave, she jumped at the chance. And sure enough, after she left, the farm fell to ruin. At her installation ceremony, down in the flat marshes by the sea, she cupped her hands and accepted the tree sapling from the wizard and enchantress. They were her heroes, and she hoped to learn a great deal from them and prove that she could grow anything, anywhere. She thought that the idea of new gods on the island was strange, but then again, this king was giving her a purpose instead of taking her purpose away. Even if she was uncomfortable with the idea of being a god, she could use her position to do some good. And that's what she did. She made something out of nothing. Sometimes something extraordinary. And if you asked her, she'd never deny that her hens laid twice a day. As the electric sky crackled around them, she felt the life of the tree in her hands, and she could feel it growing. The roots curled around her fingers. She had to get it in the ground before it attached itself to her. She lovingly planted it in the shallow soil, and the roots took hold. And then she could feel the crackling sky in her veins. She made eye contact with the god of justice and the god of knowledge. They felt it too, all with lightning in their eyes. There was life in them that had not been there before. This tree not only brings prosperity to the island, it makes the gods immortal, the enchantress had said. As long as the tree lives, the gods live on forever. The tree will live until the blood of the innocent falls on it, the wizard continued. The king clapped. He had requested the blood of the innocent bit as a failsafe because he figured he was the only one on the island cruel enough to sacrifice an innocent soul if the need arose. But he didn't want to kill his new gods. He wanted to become an all-powerful one. Several years later, after the execution of the enchantress, a red cough worked its way through the children of the island. They didn't have a starfruit crop that year because the seeds were used to banish the demon spirit haunting the king's son, exactly like the wizard had said. The goddess worked her fields and scoured the jungle for more starfruits, but none could be found. The king showed up at the beach cottage with the three gods in tow. "First you execute my wife and now you've come back for me?" the wizard asked. The king chuckled. "I need you for one last thing," he said. But he didn't sound like he was joking. "The red sickness has touched our children." Anne joined the wizard on the beach, but when she saw the god of knowledge, she hid behind the wizard. The god of knowledge cocked his head like a curious animal without changing his expression and watched the effect he had on her. "Which I warned you about," the wizard said. The king nodded at the god of justice who held up his sword. So you admit that you caused this, the king demanded. The wizard chewed on his words. I followed your directions, he said. You chose your son over all the children in the village. The king shrugged. We need more starfruit, he said. You can't, Anne said. It would deplete the soil for the other crops, the wheat and the... Aha, the king said. So it can be done. We must be more positive in our thinking. The fate of the children is in your hands. The king winked at Anne, but the goddess of plenty's one good eye glared a hole through her, insanely jealous that the wizard was teaching Anne the secrets and not her. In the present, Anne and Mikey approached the Tree of Life. Walk only on the grass, she said, as they traversed through the lowlands nearly level with the beach. Quicksand. Mikey had heard about quicksand all his life, traveled the globe, never seen it. But if there was one place that it wouldn't be a legend, it was here. Up ahead was a tree that didn't look like the others. It was wide, with strong branches, and not that tall. As they approached, Mikey could see that the branches of the tree had grown around the goddess of plenty, so she was now part of the tree. The tree had a heartbeat, and the god of plenty had roots. Anne and Mikey were right up on the tree god now, close enough to see the grotesquerie of it all. The goddess hissed at them in the moonlight. She looked Mikey up and down. I wasn't expecting another stray, she said, and sniffed the air. There's no way he's innocent either. Guess I'm safe for now. She cackled. Wait, so the blood of the innocent, Anne began, is literally the blood of the innocent, the goddess replied. You guys are stuck on the island for a little bit longer. I'd feel bad if it wasn't for what you did to us. Anne pondered her words. Don't you want to be put out of your misery? She asked. Don't you want it to be over? The goddess cackled. Oh, honey, it is, she said, so confidently that it sent a chill down Mikey's spine. He got a terrible feeling and looked around, and then he saw him. The god of justice with the sword of purity. He was limping and wet, but still tall and imposing. And that sword. Don't get any bright ideas, honey, the goddess said. You're cute. Might just take you with me. Mikey didn't have a chance to ask where they might be going before the tree's roots and branches wrapped around his arms and legs. The god of justice ran as fast as his injured leg would take him, his sword in his right hand above his shoulder, pointed forward and ready to stab. As he struggled against the branches, Mikey thought back to Anne's warning that the sword's blade couldn't touch the gods under any circumstances, and saw how excited the goddess was about the thought of the blade piercing her. It was an excitement he didn't share. Anne looked at the path back to the ship in the jungle. Now that the flame of knowledge was out, she could get the ship and make a break for it. But Mikey couldn't. And the wizard had told them to leave together. He was the only person she ever truly trusted, and she wasn't about to let him down. Anne jumped in front of the charging god, stopping his forward progress. She was much smaller than he was, but he didn't have her determination. Unfortunately, in stopping the charging god, the sword pierced her torso under her shoulder. She had been stabbed before, shot, but nothing hurt like that sword, whose tip was just feet from Mikey and the goddess of plenty. Mikey could see the blood dripping from the sword. He didn't know how long Anne could hold him there. When the harvest failed that year, as the wizard had predicted, the wizard was scapegoated for being correct. The king had the wizard up at the terrace by the sea and the subjects around them. The god of justice stood over the wizard with his sword while the other gods stood by. Do you confess to causing the failed harvest? The king demanded. His eyes pleaded with the wizard. He was more interested in saving face than killing the sorcerer. I confess to following your instructions, the wizard said. The god of justice lifted his sword. The wizard looked up at the blade, not in fear, but with hope. The god of knowledge cocked his head, studying the situation. The goddess of plenty noticed the surprising reaction too. But the king didn't, and the god of justice just wanted to strike flesh. Just apologize and we can move forward, King Calyx said. I am a gracious king, but we are out of food. What can you do to help us? The wizard thought about his words. The goddess of plenty looked out at the crowd. Nothing but angry faces. They trusted the wizard much more than the king or any of the gods. And that was dangerous. You ask me to help, I explain the consequences, and then you get mad that everything happens exactly as I said it would, the wizard said. You've traded smaller disasters for bigger disasters until it's all come crashing down. If people are hungry, they should eat their king. The god of justice couldn't take it any longer and brought down the sword. The wizard smiled as the blade separated his head from his body. No, the king yelled, and then chaos broke out. Someone threw a rock at the god of justice and he snapped. He swung his sword indiscriminately into the crowd. Behind me, the king yelled. The remaining soldiers, along with the god of justice, blocked the exit from the terrace. The king and the other gods stood behind them. Join us, the king bade his wife, but she stood in front of the terrified townspeople like a shield. It's not safe out there. No, she replied, clutching their son. You have to stop this. The king was done with insubordination. Loyalty or leap, the king shouted. No one answered or moved. Forward, the king yelled. The doom formation advanced several steps. It was very clear what the intent was. Loyalty or leap, the king shouted. The subjects huddled together. No one broke rank. There's no food, the queen shouted, and it's all your fault. I'd rather a quick death than a long one if those are the choices. Anne knew that the end of the civilization was near, but she didn't want to die violently along with so many innocent people. They were only a few steps from the cliff. She thought about how hard she had fought to secure her own freedom, only to end up on the island, and how much she had dreamed of escaping. A voice echoed in her ears. Your sacrifice sets the balance, it said, and she knew she was talking to the island. Choose your words carefully. I trade my freedom for the captivity of the gods, she shouted, stealing attention before a large and sudden storm hit the island. As long as the false gods are alive and captive, then so are you, the island said, but everyone else only heard the winds gathering. Neither you nor the false gods may alter this deal. The god of knowledge cocked his head. Oh no, she's one of them, the goddess of plenty screamed. With a bolt of lightning, the god of justice was knocked back to his stand. He picked up his sword and ran at Anne, but there was a chain around his neck. The chain that once held the anchor of the boat that brought them here, and it was bolted to the ground. It snapped him back, jerking the sword from his hands. The sword landed in the stone terrace. The subjects cheered and took the chance to chase after the startled soldiers who fled with the king down the stone steps. The sword was stuck in the ground and they couldn't get it free. The god of knowledge, furiously drawing the scene, was sent flying by another bolt of lightning. When he arose, he was inside the library, and there was wood and metal bent around the doors and the windows, permanently trapping him. No, the goddess of plenty pled. Please, please, not me. But another bolt of lightning struck her, and the winds of the storm sent her back to the tree of plenty, which grabbed her with its branches, never let her go. She had a front row seat for the king and his remaining guards running down to a cave at the lower end of the island where he had stored an emergency escape boat, Anne's boat. The king had promised to take the goddess of plenty and the other gods with him in such a situation. Instead, she watched him and the soldiers veer off the grassy path and into the quicksand. The king wasn't listening when he was told not to step off the grass. Nor did he listen when the wizard had explained how to escape it. The king's approach was to try to bully his way through no matter what, but with quicksand, and often in life, the only way out is thoughtful action. The goddess watched them slowly slip beneath the surface. And there the goddess remained for decades, cursed with unending life, as the subjects, who banded together and did their best, slowly died off of natural causes. And now it was her turn. The blade was just inches away. Anne didn't have anything left, but she offered it to the island anyway, begging for mercy and escape. Mikey struggled one hand free. He thought about how far he had come and how tragic it would be to die this close to freedom. His head was swimming with everything that had happened as he tried to think of a solution, but all he could see was the tip of the sword of purity. The sword of purity. Anne spoke about her life before the island in terms that Mikey recognized and knew that she might have been a criminal too. But she'd sacrificed so much for him and for the island. If a third-rate lord could come here and be a king, if 3 misfit humans could become gods, then surely the sword of purity could make a criminal an innocent. Mikey reached out his hand, and several drops of blood landed on it from the tip of the sword. "No," the goddess yelled. Mikey turned around to smear the blood on the goddess's face, but a thin branch caught his hand. Anne lost another step. The tip of the sword was inches from the tree. Mikey pushed with all his might. He thought about Christmas with his parents, the old plates, the wilted fake tree, the worn couch. How sad his mother would be if he didn't show up yet again. His love for his parents was stronger than the hatred of the old gods, and he smeared Anne's blood on the goddess's face before the sword could pierce her. The goddess screamed. The god of justice writhed and contorted until he stopped and lay still. "You did it," Anne said, and pulled herself from the sword. The tree released Mikey, and he knelt at Anne's side. "No, it was you," Mikey said. "Your blood, your innocence." Anne's eyes rolled back and then opened again. "We have to get to the ship," she said. "You're in no position to sail," Mikey replied. "Isn't there a potion or a tea that would help?" Anne shook her head. "No time," she said, and pointed to the path the king had meant to take. "Just the grassy parts." Mikey picked up Anne with both of his arms and carefully walked her down the grassy path. The last thing he remembered from the ship was laying next to Anne on the small boat, pretending that she wasn't dying and hoping that the winds were taking them somewhere that they needed to go. They were out of food, out of water, and existing on hope. But the stars were so, so beautiful. Mikey woke up in a hospital bed. He was sunburned and starving, but warm and safe. "Where am I?" he asked, softly, not yet opening his eyes. His lips were cracked and his mouth was dry. "You're in a hospital," his mother's voice replied, and he realized he was holding her hand. There was another firm hand on his shoulder. "I'll get the doctor," his father said, and headed out. "We're in Wilmington," his mother said. "You almost made it home. Not in time for Christmas, but this time I forgive you. I think a lot of people have questions for you, but we'll bust you out of here as soon as we can. I couldn't remember if you liked the little gingerbread men or the snowflakes, so I got them both." "It was the Christmas tree cakes," he said, laughing, just now able to open his eyes. "But I'll eat anything at this point, and I'm just so happy to see you." His mom teared up. "When we heard about the plane," she started, her lips quivering, "I didn't know if we'd ever..." A man in a black suit walked into the room. He obviously wasn't a doctor. "Welcome back," the agent said, but there was no hospitality in his pleasantries. "I understand you're still recovering, but we have an urgent question." Mikey tried to sit up, ever the bad patient, but he was too weak. "Were the bones in the suitcase when you left Jamaica, or was there something different?" the agent asked. Mikey's heart sunk. The suitcase. "Wait, what bones?" he asked. His mother was speechless. Because it's a crime to steal bones from another country, so the Jamaicans are upset, but if you found them elsewhere, the agent continued, you could be a hero for returning them. They were on the island, Mikey replied. Suitcase was just a suitcase before that. Totally normal. The agent smiled. So then why did you hand it to Esteban de la Cruz? The agent asked. Mikey couldn't believe it. He was closer to death than he realized. Overhead was full, Mikey said, hoping he sounded confident. I thought he was just a nice guy. The agent bit his lip, sensing that there was much more to the story. So the bones, the agent continued. Was it one of the other passengers? His mom asked. I mean, if he went cannibal to survive, you can't blame him. The agent shook his head no. Not unless they died over 300 years ago, he said. Mikey realized that it was Anne's bones in the suitcase. The papers were gone. Esteban was dead. He was free. Poor, but free. Her name was Anne, Mikey said, and she was my angel. Anne woke up on the island, except it was more of a paradise than a nightmare. The best possible version of the island. Confused, she walked from the tree of life back to the beach hut. She smelled spices and smoke. Slowly, she opened the door. Inside was the wizard and his enchantress wife that she'd never gotten to meet. They'd set the table for a meal with 3 places. Anne ran to them and hugged them with everything she had, tears streaming down her face. But how? She asked. The enchantress cackled. We were banished by a stupid king and his vanity gods, she said, who should have asked a lot more questions. To balance out their evil, we created something good. Everyone who died by the blade on the island is here, including the 3 protectors of the island, and now that we're together, the island is finally safe. But if the blade had killed the gods, Anne began. Let's not even think about that, the wizard said proudly. You did what had to be done. I'm so proud of you. I'm just sorry that it had to be this way, but there's always a cost. There's nowhere else I'd rather be, Dad, Anne said. The wizard's eyes welled up with tears. If he finally had a daughter, then this must be paradise after all. The next year at Christmas, when Mikey had healed and the bones had been deemed authentic and the political fires had been put out, there was a ceremony in Jamaica to bury the remains of the famous pirate Anne Bonny with her true love, Mary Read. Mary had died in prison, but Anne had escaped on the ship that had led her to the island. Her whereabouts were just a mystery and legend after that. But now they were together again. I guess there's no such thing as true freedom, Mikey said. She escaped one prison just to end up in another. There's also no such thing as a foolproof prison, Mikey's father replied, if you truly want freedom. Mikey's mother just hugged her son. She was happy they could finally spend a Christmas together. Insula Ignota was never found, and that's for the best.